Hi, welcome back. So the Apocalyptic Shadow rotation for 2.7 just came out, and strap in boys, this one is pretty damn tough. It's only the first Apocalyptic Shadow to come out in the 2.7 update, since 2.7 will actually have two Apocalyptic Shadow rotations for some reason. It's because this endgame cycle system is really messed up timing wise and they really need to fix it. Anyway, since the endgame modes are getting slightly harder when it comes to how much HP the enemies have, then I thought some people might need some help with this Apocalyptic Shadow rotation. It also has to be one of the most toxic rotations we've ever had. Today we're going to discuss the best team for the first rotation of the 2.7 Apocalyptic Shadow, because some of you might really need some help. I also had to rewrite this entire thing because they changed all the buffs before this rotation went to live, but hey, quite unfortunate, but at least I get to have some little extra watch time. Before we start, you should like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this in the future. You should also join the Express Rain Discord server for a very fun community, where you can find many discussions just like this one. Also, quick thank you for helping me reach my goal of 2,500 subs before the end of the year. I've been growing insanely quickly recently from the daily uploading I've been doing, and I thank you for all the support. Now let's get on to it. So first things first, let's talk about the first half. It's going to be Cocolia and her illegitimate son Japard, the unplayable one with a really cool move. The buffs for this boss are as follows. First off, Rhyme Piercer, which increases all break damage taken by enemies by 10% and increases ally speed by 20% when they break a weakness. A break buff which could be good against Cocolia, and we'll get to that later. Resistance of Decay, which tallies up all the dot the boss receives before it's broken, and then when it does become broken, the boss takes damage equal to 200% of the tallied up dot. They actually had to buff this one up because before it went live it was only 170% and it was kinda shit. And honestly, it's still kinda shit. Rolling Storm, which increases quantum damage by 60% and advances a unit's action forward when it defeats an enemy. So from these buffs we can already deduct a few very useful teams. The most fun of which is obviously going to be a Kafka Black Swan dot team, obviously taking advantage of the DOT buff, which is supposed to deal an insane amount of damage since it's being tallied up, but it really doesn't do that much damage. The weaknesses line up as well, since Cocolia has both lightning and wind weaknesses, while Japard only has lightning. But come on, we all know Black Swan deals an insane amount of damage anyway, right? Dakaron may also be a pretty fun team to play against Cocolia here. However, I think for some players an Acheron team may be best preserved for the second half boss, which we'll be discussing in a bit still. There used to be an ultimate and FUA damage buff which was catering to both Faciao and Acheron, but as we said it got changed and it was changed to the break buff instead. Either way, Faciao is still pretty good here. All Faciao teams will work since the weaknesses line up absolutely beautifully. Topaz, Moza, Huntmarch 7th. Whichever one you've got, they're going to work pretty damn well. But you have to be careful since Cocolia has 60% imaginary resistance, so March isn't going to do that much damage to her. I'd focus her damage on Japard so she can start breaking his weakness and hopefully prevent him from making a shield. Those two are definitely going to be the top teams, definitely including Acheron as well, but for the third time, some players may want to reserve her. I just wanted to throw it out there that if you don't have to reserve her for the second half, she is still an immaculate choice against this mother and son combo. If the buffs didn't change, Acheron and Faciao would have been so much better than they are, but they're still pretty good to clear Cocolia either way. Honestly, these two, Cocolia and Japard, aren't very scaled up when it comes to HP. The first thing that comes to mind when I see that is a Mono Quantum team, also because of that juicy quantum damage buff. Specifically though, a Mono Quantum team that doesn't really need Silverwolf because they already have quantum weaknesses. Maybe someone like Jiaoqiu would work better, honestly, especially if you're using Qingqiwei instead of Zila. Zila will still work incredibly well though because the Apocalyptic Shadow version of Cocolia spawns a lot of Ice Spears, so Zila can make quick work of them to proc her Resurgence. Other teams like a Himiko Jade team would work as well. However, while you break the boss pretty damn quickly with a Himiko Jade combo, and especially if you're using Wanmei, you may find yourself struggling to deal a lot of damage to Cocolia when she is knocked down, so you may need to instead use either a Himiko Super Break team instead, or just have E1 Jade who will be really good against this Cocolia boss. Firefly Super Break is also obviously going to work incredibly well because of the fire weakness, and especially because Firefly can also implant fire on Japard, which will help with breaking his shield and disrupting him. I wouldn't use Rappa at all here. If I was going for Super Break, I'd use her in the second half, because as we mentioned, Cocolia has 60% imaginary resistance, so your Rappa is going to do way less damage. Finally, with the advent of Sunday, then Jingyuan is also going to be a pretty damn good option against this boss, and so would honestly a hypercarry Topaz team or a hypercarry Linksha team. Those two do sound kinda fun honestly, however you need to be careful since your part doesn't have fire weakness and your Topaz or your Linksha would have to do a lot of damage to kill him. The shield he gives to Cocolia and her ice spikes is very annoying and you need to break him to destroy it quickly enough, so Jigyuan would be better than the Topaz or Linksha hypercarry. All these other teams don't have a problem when it comes to Japard, especially since Fei Xiao breaks all weaknesses too, except Topaz or Linksha hypercarry. You could use a March 7th or something like that with them to be able to defeat Japard or break his weaknesses quickly. I also want to mention lastly, before we move on, that Linksha and Fushuan are definitely the best sustains against this Cocolia, just like Gallagher if you have neither. However, I would save whichever Fire Abundance unit you have for the second half, so Fushuan havers, rejoice as your sustain unit is finally a best in slot for an endgame mode again. That was a pretty damn good list of teams for the first half. There were some in there, specifically for the fourth time, Acheron, which you wanted to reserve for the second half, and also maybe something like Rappa, but we don't need to make it mysterious any longer. Let's take a look at what buffs we have here while we fight the Banana Academics TAF TVs. First off, Cheat Sheet, which increases character attack by 25% when buffing them up with another ally skill or ultimate, lasting for 2 turns and stacking up to 2 times. Second one is Recess, which increases ultimate and FUA damage against weakness broken enemies by 70%. Very good for Acheron, as we've been mentioning. And lastly, After Belt Detention, which increases kill and basic attack damage dealt by allies by 55%. So obviously, the best team against this big group of idiots is going to be a Rappa break team. Firefly is also going to work pretty well here, but it's good to note that Rappa might be a little better at breaking 5 targets than Ease or Firefly is, especially when they have imaginary weakness. Both are going to do insane damage obviously, they're break units, just use whichever one you want, and break is kinda boring except for Boot Hill teams, so let's move on. A not so boring break team to play is Himiko Super Break, which because the enemies have fire weakness is absolutely going to be insanely fun. Only because it's Himiko though. Once we get Fugue with this team though, it'll be a lot more fun. I'm definitely going to have to try that out. With Himiko benefiting from Fugue's Exo Toughness so much, you're going to see many follow-up attacks coming from Himiko, which will hopefully shred away this big stupid group of idiots. Linksha is obviously the prime sustain for this stage, otherwise you can use something like Gallagher as we've mentioned earlier. Aventurine is also very useful here though because of the imaginary weakness, and the way the boss works as well, which gives you a chance to break the enemies instantly without depleting their whole toughness bar. Aventurine is going to do a lot of attacks, especially since the enemies are also always guaranteed to attack you, and so he's going to be very useful at breaking them. Keep in mind that unlike the MOC, you can't change the TV screens to be happy, which is why this rotation is so damn toxic and annoying. They're always going to be taking away your energy and skill points even if it is at a lower rate than they would in the MOC. You have to keep them broken over and over again, or else you're gonna have a bad time. So Linksha and Aventurine, who do many follow-up attacks that will give you more chances to break them, are insane for this rotation. As we said earlier, Acheron is also going to work pretty damn well against this thing, because of course she does. She's Acheron, and this thing has lightning weakness, and even then, Acheron reduces all weaknesses no matter the type and ignores 20% of all type resistance, so she really doesn't care. Really going in on the nihility aspect of your kit there, Queen. This thing does have 4 million HP for 2 phases, but don't worry, it doesn't have nearly as much toughness as the 2.6 Apocalyptic Shadow Sunday did, which was an absolute disaster for almost everyone who didn't have a proper Super Break team. You're going to be able to dispatch it incredibly easily with Acheron still, unlike someone like Bladewood, so I really wouldn't worry. With a well-built enough Acheron, you'll easily do 1.5 to 3 million damage per burst because of the insane ult damage buff we got. Guinaifen and Jiaoshu are insane during this Apocalyptic Shadow rotation too, and Guinaifen, as I see it, is actually a little better than Pella if you had E2 Acheron but no Jiaoshu. And of course it's because Guinaifen has a splash attack, so it gives her more chances to do the whole chance to break even if you don't deplete the whole bar thing. When playing Guinaifen I also noticed that she was a lot more useful than Pella here. The basic and skill damage buff makes me think they think some people are going to use Jingliu and Dan Honkai Ellen here, and honestly with Sunday they could be a pretty fine team comp, but I don't expect them to exactly clear very quickly. You'll probably need Sunday to clear with any more than 1300 action value, however the weaknesses match, so I guess you can go for it. Choose between your Jingliu and Dill, give them Sunday and Robin, or possibly Ruan Mei, one of the sustains we mentioned, and you'll definitely clear relatively quickly. There are unfortunately going to be some characters that find much less use in this Apocalyptic Shadow, specifically Boot Hill, but you can still probably absolutely destroy Cocolia with him because he's Boot Hill and he's that guy. But other than Boot Hill, I would think that it's pretty hard to clear this Apocalyptic Shadow with any other team than the ones I've shown you today. I'd love if I was proven wrong though, it's always fun when the community makes some new, fun, weird-ass teams. So that's it, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this helped you reach a conclusion of what teams to use, and hopefully you enjoy the 2.7 Apocalyptic Shadow. Like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and join the Express Rain Discord server for a very fun community where you'll find more discussions just like this one. Thank you again for watching, and for the insane support, and I will see you next time.